I spent the past couple of days playing quite a bit of Last Stand on the PTS. I tried all kind of different builds, Alpha of course, but I also played some games with a defense set with a Midas. I tried both the Tacticians and the Reclaimers, and I even borrowed a few accounts from my friends to play Strikers, Nomad, a Sentry Shield build and a Predator's Mark build. Big props to these guys, by the way, for trusting me enough to share their accounts with me, because that has really allowed me to get a good feel of what works in Last Stand and what doesn't, and get a nice idea of how the game type works. Now I know that I'm a little bit on the late side when it comes down to giving you an overview of Last Stand with my thoughts on it and maybe some feedback and all that stuff, as the game mode it has been out on the PTS for a couple of weeks now, and I highly doubt that Massive will be able to make any changes at all based on my feedback, as we're already so much closer to the official launch of patch 1.6. But, to be honest, I also don't think that I could have made this video a whole lot sooner. You see, in week 1 of the PTS, Last Stand wasn't available. In week 2 of the PTS, the game was utterly unbalanced to the point where I was able to spawn camp entire teams in Last Stand, not really giving me the best overview of the game mode in itself. And to top it all off, I've also been a little bit busy with the Wildlands beta that dropped this week. So yeah, here we are, the 7th of February, and still no Last Stand video. But today, it is time to finally take a proper look at this new DLC. Better late than never, right? At least, I hope so. So let's begin. As most of you know by now, Last Stand is the new 8 vs 8 PvP game type where players have to try and capture 3 areas on the map. You have Area A, Area B, and Area C. If you've ever played Conquest in the Battlefield games, Domination in the Call of Duty games, or Territories in Halo, well, it's very similar to that, but instead of staying in one area to quote-unquote capture it, each of these areas actually have 3 nodes somewhere around them that have to all be activated by either one team or another to start earning points. I believe you get 10 points a second for each area captured, and the first team to reach 15,000 points, that team, that takes the win. Aside from points though, players can also earn currency. They can get currency from killing mobs around the map. As far as I know, this currency is only good for 2 things. First up is fortifying a captured area. Each team can buy turrets and scanners around the capture area that they spawn closest to. So one team can set up turrets near capture point A, and then the other team can set up those turrets near capture point C. These turrets and scanners, they make it a little bit more difficult for enemy players to run all the way around the map, right past capture point B, and go for a base race, so to speak. I'm not saying that is impossible to do, far from that actually, but these scanners and these turrets, they will definitely slow players down. The second thing that this currency can be used for are the mid-game buffs that players can try to activate. A few minutes after a game has started, 2 special nodes will spawn at the outskirts of a map. One of those nodes is a point multiplier, which will give you 60% more points per second from the areas that you have captured across the map. And then the other one is a point for kill boost, which once you bought it, it gives your team 75 extra points per player kill and then 10 extra points per NPC killed for the entire duration of the boost. As you can probably tell by the description, both of these boosts are very powerful, but they will also cost a whole lot. They will set you back 2,000 currency. That is what you have to spend to activate them. Now these boosts, they definitely give an interesting twist to the gameplay, because until these spawn in, the fights usually happen on and around capture point B. However, after they spawn in, you have little groups of players splitting up and going in all different directions to either farm the mobs for the team to get currency or to activate one of those boosts. This is also the moment in the game where a good player or a good team of players can really make their place. They can really start making a difference. With smaller groups everywhere, you aren't always just fighting versus a horde of players that just keep going in and going in. And killing a player at one of those boost locations or at one of those landmarks, that will actually force them to spawn quite far away from where they died. So if you, for example, manage to outplay a few other players at these key locations and then deny NPC kills from the enemy team or secure the point boost for your team, you can gain a pretty gigantic point lead, which in a lot of cases snowballs the game pretty hard and secures the game's victory almost every time. I don't think that this game mode is a super unique experience. As I already said at the start of the video, it's pretty similar to what other games have done, such as Battlefield, Call of Duty, or Halo, and we already know what this sort of game mode is about. But it is a pretty solid PvP mode, which I really believe is what this game desperately needed. I can agree that the Dark Zone offers a lot of fun PvP moments, and a Dark Zone will definitely not go away from me. But if I'm looking to just shoot up a couple of things, I can definitely see myself queuing up in this game mode. Do I think it's perfect though? Not really. I think a few things can be done to improve the overall experience and make it a little more based on player skill and aim, because right now, I don't believe that makes enough of a difference. For starters, and this is just me echoing what others have already mentioned before, but I would really like to see ultimate abilities removed from this game type. With 16 players fighting each other and the cooldowns of ultimate abilities generally sitting around an average of 6 minutes due to skill haste or players simply getting some NPC kills, you never really have a fight without a green or without a blue ulti popping up, and even myself have in some cases just started the fight straight up with popping a yellow or a green link, just because I know that one of my teammates will probably have one ready for me the next minute anyway. And it really shows. At least half of the times that someone goes down, someone can instantly get revived with a recovery link. And every time you see players running at you, well, it's with a blue link. It kind of throws away a lot of the potential strategy that this game mode can have when you can just pop a blue or a green and run in to face tank whatever the enemy is throwing at you. And it doesn't just happen once, it doesn't just happen for one major play. Players can do that, and then they can do that again the next minute when the group cooldown has worn off. I get it. I get that these signature skills are supposed to be the ultimate abilities that are being activated in big moments to make that difference, but really, it doesn't play out like that at all. If anything, if Massive really doesn't want to get rid of these ultimate abilities, I think it may be a good idea to turn these signature skills into pickups on the map, where after a few minutes into the game, comparable to a power weapon such as a rocket launcher, these things spawn in and you can go to the location to pick it up. This would limit the amount of signature skills that you would see every single fight, but it would also force players a bit away from just fighting at point B. And then, if you have such a signature skill, then you can use it to make that difference. Also, they wouldn't be available to everybody right from the start, which is also a pretty big cause of the whole problem, I believe. The first fight of a game always starts off with a yellow, blue and green. That can't be the way it's intended, right? Second thing I want to touch upon is that I think that players spawn with way too many resources available to them. Every time that a player spawns in, you get the full 5 medkits and the 4 frag grenades that you would get at a full restock, which really not only allows some players to just spam grenades and then die only to do it all over again, but it also allows players to take a lot more damage before actually dying because they can heal themselves up 5 times for free. As a result, taking damage isn't that punishing and people still tend to run around in the open not caring that much about cover and all. I think it would be a really good idea if players only started off with 1 grenade and 2 medkits every respawn. Not for the Dark Zone of course, but only in Last Stand. And of course, if you manage to kill some mobs or some other players, you can maybe get a few extra if RNG is on your side, just like in a normal game. But giving away that much resources for free with each life, that's just way too much. Now I get where some of you guys are coming from. This may sound kinda weird to some of you watching this. Only 2 medkits, you ask? How do you expect me to survive versus 4 people with that? Thing is though, I don't expect you to survive versus that amount of people. You also don't need to in Last Stand. For starters, Last Stand is a team game. You have 7 people with you. And if you go in alone versus 4 enemies and then die, well, that's kinda your fault. Second up, dying is also not that big of a deal in Last Stand, and I know that ID is pretty hard to get to considering that dying in the Dark Zone is a really big deal, so for the past year everybody's build has always been around the notion to do everything while not dying at all costs. However, in Last Stand, if you take out 2 guys and then die because you're out of medkits, well, in that case you did a pretty damn good job. You killed 2 guys, that's a 2-for-1 trade, and when you die you can respawn back almost instantaneously. Now some players have actually also caught on to this idea, the idea that dying isn't that big of a deal, and as a result you see a lot of people running with a lot more specialized builds that focus a lot less on sustain and staying alive, but focuses more on dealing damage or doing other things. You have some people running without a first aid, you have a couple of people running with 8k firearms, sniping away from a distance, and I really believe that this alone made the game a lot more interesting. You see a lot more builds coming up. But then you also have these people running around with short bow knee pads just running at you, spamming their grenades until they're empty, only to die and then come back doing the exact same thing 20 seconds later. That's also not the most enjoyable experience. Last up, I also want to say that I think that players should not be able to use consumables in Last Stand either. Now that Reclaimer has been reworked and none of the gear sets or talents in the game are designed especially around the consumables, I don't think it would be a really big deal to take these away from the players, just for Last Stand of course. The reason that I don't want those consumables to be there is that they provide an unfair advantage for anyone that has them available to himself. 30% faster cooldowns, 10% more damage, 40% more healing received, those kind of things, they're kind of a really big deal and they don't really fit the whole quote-unquote balanced PvP. Of course, quote-unquote, because the PvP is not actually that balanced. Certain gear sets and items will still be stronger than others, even though there is a certain degree of gear normalization. But I just don't really like the idea of someone winning a fight because he had fire ammo enabled and the other person, well, he didn't restock on consumables before he went into a last stand session. So hey, bad luck to him. Don't forget to restock on those consumables next time. Yeah, not the best thing. To finish up this video, I want to mention a few things about the game mechanics which aren't a last stand specific topic, but I still wanted to mention it because I know that these things will heavily affect the whole experience of it. With the first one being the sidestepping or strafing. Yes, here I go again, but we're in week 3 of the PTS, and this is still a real thing. I can still use it just to keep a couple of players busy with me that should have killed me a long time ago. And if this doesn't go away with the official release of patch 1.6, then this is going to be open for abuse in last stand as well. That's a bad thing. Maybe not for the ones that actually use it, but for everybody else, it is. But yeah, that's going to be it for now though. Overall, I think that Last Stand is a pretty good experience. The servers on the PTS were kinda bad at times. There were some games where I had to play with over 200 ping, while in the Dark Zone, you know, I would only have 40, which was kinda annoying, and the whole game mode is by no means perfect. But I'd also say that it's definitely worth the purchase if you enjoy PvP in the Division. Of course, if you don't enjoy PvP, then this update probably is not for you. Unless for some reason you really need the cosmetic items that you get from playing this game mode. But yeah, as always, I will see you guys later, or like they say in the Netherlands, zie je later.